Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope so far you guys have really enjoyed all the three sessions, right? This is the analytics segment on covering live events and breaking news. My name is Christy. I'll be your host for this session. Quick introduction about myself. I've been in customer-facing roles for over a decade now, handling different use cases, scenarios, lot of data, right? So I do know for a fact that whether it's a custom dashboard or good old Google Analytics, it's data that speaks, right? So on that note, we have two amazing speakers with us today, right? First is Chanpreet Singh. So Chanpreet is the analytics and SEO head of Network 18 Digital. He has over 2 decades of experience handling analytics, SEO, SEM, you basically name it, he has experience for it. And he has worked across big names like Times Internet, AOL before joining Network 18. I love something which he had mentioned, that he believes that the digital industry is an ever-changing domain and requires a constant amount of learning and unlearning. This is something like it resonated with me so well. Great to have you here today, Chanpreet.
Great to be here, Christy. Thanks for the great introduction there.
Awesome. All right. Our next speaker is Abhishek Marla. He is a customer success manager at Chartbeat, and he is responsible for handling publishers across Asia, right? To leverage real-time data and engagement to grow a beautiful and loyal audience. Welcome, Abhishek.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. So in this segment, our objective is very simple, right? Chanpreet, Abhishek, help us understand what role real analytics plays when breaking news and live events are being covered in a newsroom, right? So without further ado, let's dive into the first bit, which you can see on your screens right now, which are the key aspects of tracking any live event or breaking news, right? My first question is to you, Abhishek, right? How do you ensure, right, that you have the maximum amount of traffic flowing towards you during any live event or breaking news? For example, just in the last segment, Vahe mentioned that we now have 7 different types of search, right, which is crazy. So I would like to understand from you, what are the key areas that you focus on and that can be spread across sources?
Yeah, so I think for me, right, I'm not the one who essentially pulls the trigger, right? I just provide the data to publishers and to journalists and editors to actually pull this trigger.
Right.
But from my experience, and hopefully Chanpreet also will resonate with this, search is great. Search is where most of the traffic now, we're all dependent on. But essentially, when it comes to live events, especially like real-time data, I think something that Vahe said really resonated with me is that when an event happens, that's when you can capture your audiences and convert them into loyal users, get them to return, right?
Right.
So I think the first thing that you essentially do is you look at, if I'm talking from a traffic perspective, you look at where these audiences are coming from. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the gaps. So essentially, there are 3 ways to look at it. Okay, one is of course your search traffic, which is your, which is where you have users who are returning, but also users who are discovering.
Right.
Especially with live events, I think you'll have more users discovering. Mm-hmm. And then you have your own internal traffic. Mm-hmm. Users discovering this within your own website. Mm-hmm. And then you have your social users, which most likely are users that are actually like surfing, and then, they just land up to the event either via Facebook or WhatsApp or, email. It could be anything, right?
Right.
Now, simple steps here would be is where is the opportunity, as of now. So say if it's going to be internal, you really want to optimize the pages, that you want to optimize the page experience to ensure that more users discover that particular page. Right. So ensuring that your homepage is optimized in a way that users come to that page, or your section pages, your landing pages all across, or even article to article pages to increase recirculation and get people to actually increase internal traffic.
Right.
Now with social, you have many avenues. So for example, if you want to drive loyalty, push notifications is a very, very cost-effective way to drive loyalty and also increase traffic.
That's music to my ears. Yeah.
I could write a book, but I also want Chanpreet to speak. But then
Right.
you also have like emails or say, I mean, you have emails, which is a very cost-effective mode of, increasing traffic. And
Right.
then comes your social posts, etc.
Mhm. Mhm.
Search is a very tricky one because you don't control it, obviously.
Right.
But optimize search in a way that you can be discovered on search. So if you're asking me about driving traffic, these are the best tips that I can give you, say spontaneously. But
Right.
I mean, of course, I would love to hear Chanpreet's like point of view because I know he probably does this. I mean, like a lot more than I do. So yeah.
Of course, Abhishek, I mean, whatever you mentioned does make sense.
Mhm.
Just want to know how many times you have to mention push notification in the call.
At least like about 6 or 7. We have a half an hour slot, so yeah.
Yeah, great. No, I mean, I would like to split it into two, right? So discovery happens. I mean, you have your loyal users, you got your new users, right? So new users are discovering you either through search
Mhm.
or through social.
Mhm.
Primarily, I mean, if that's the user-initiated search.
Right.
But of course, and the other part is your marketing channels, like Abhishek mentioned. You need to reach out to them. So one is a push and the other is a pull, right?
Mhm.
So they are trying to discover content. Users are trying to discover content. Either they are your loyal users or returning users. Doesn't matter for the live event at that time. For
Mhm.
them, they would want to see the best uh, results out of whatever
Right.
they're finding.
Right.
And studies have shown us, and again, data has enabled that, saying
Mhm.
that usually people see more than 3 sites for
Mhm.
the same information before they decide what they need to actually read. So the
Mhm.
competition is high,
Mhm.
and search is up there. I mean, we've heard a lot of other panelists talk about where search comes in, but
Mhm.
different marketing channels are also playing a key pivotal role
Right.
along with it.
Got it. Okay. All right. Okay. Awesome. I think it was in the first segment, the editorial segment. Prasad mentioned that they rely on analytics to give them insights on what is working and what is not. Right. So
We have
Chanpreet, my
been
question.
present all along.
I have. All right. So my question, Chanpreet, is for you. That in this midst of chaos, right, when data is flowing right, left, and center from everywhere, who is actually in charge of reading through all the noise and providing that feedback to the product and editorial teams, right? What does this collaboration look like in a newsroom?
A great question. So, I would put it as this way. Everybody is responsible to read data. It's not
Right.
a responsibility of one person against the other person, right?
Right.
Everybody, all
Mhm.
stakeholders, whether it's marketing, editorial, product,
Mhm.
analytics, SEO,
Mhm.
everybody has to
Mhm.
look at that data. It's
Right.
everybody's responsibility. So if you want to break it down, what do people do?
Mhm.
The editorial team, and they're not working in silos, right? They're
Right.
working along with particularly SEOs, social media, right?
Mhm.
The social media team, and
Mhm.
and like I mentioned earlier, you're looking at discoverability of how your content is being
Yeah.
discovered.
Yeah.
They have to keep a keen eye on what is the user interest at that time, how the story is developing, right? So they
Mhm.
have one eye on the development of the story, how it's coming up, one eye on what are users actually trying to find, right?
Mhm.
That depends on what are the queries they're making for that story.
Mhm.
So that's something which will drive what they produce
Mhm.
in turn. So that's one big input that they're looking for. So they have
Right.
eye on Google Trends for that matter.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have an eye on the Google results page, and they're trying
Right.
to see where they're ranking and
Right.
who's ranking and who's ranking. What are they doing? So all
Right.
those inputs are being looked at very closely by SEOs, by editorials,
Mhm.
and also the discoverability through other channels, marketing and social media are also looking at it. The social buzz is a very big input. You have to
Right.
keep an eye.
Right.
Uh, I would like to digress at this point and call out one big, uh, research which Chartbeat did a lot of years back, and I still quote it that breaking news, the
Mhm.
discoverability is through search, right?
Right.
Once
Right.
the event is done, then the
Right.
discussion of that news
Mhm.
happens on social.
On social.
Correct me if
Right.
I'm wrong,
Yeah.
Abhishek. That's the
Yeah,
crux of, and I think it
correct.
was somewhere around 2012, 2013 that the study was done.
Wow.
Valid,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Right.
So it's something which you have to find out, but that doesn't mean that when the event is going on, search is social is redundant.
Mhm.
You have to keep an eye at that time also, because there are a lot of users who are discovering traffic, and it is valid today more than any other time when
Mhm.
people are really live on Instagrams, Facebook,
Mhm.
with the
Mhm.
TikTok era. Everybody has one finger on social media all day. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Abhishek can share any metrics around that. But I would believe that it will be a big part of the usage, the mobile usage all day, particularly because of WhatsApp.
Right. Yeah.
So that discoverability part, everybody has to keep a keen eye on data, right? Coming to marketing teams, so they have to be, looking at all that data, and they have to come in and say, okay, where can we boost this traffic? Whether we need to go and reach out to users through social, through notifications, push notifications, push notifications. Oh, sorry, I mentioned that earlier. Yeah, and emailers, of course, are valid in real time as well. You know, if you send out the email in the right time, why not? It's all depends on what strategy you're following, how you want to reach out to your users, and how do you regularly reach out to your users. So that's very important, right? And product and technology. I mean, I would say their work is even more important. You know, when an event happens, particularly a non-scheduled event, right? So they have to keep an eye on how their technology is working out, how the server errors, if there is any bottleneck. So that has to be figured out in real time. Otherwise, it's going to be disaster. So their role is very important in this. So the platform where you are actually showing your core content, it has to run smoothly, no doubt about it. And product and technology also has to keep an eye on traffic at that time, you know, seeing what the kind of load that's coming in. Now, joining it all together is analytics team, right? So analytics has to ensure that everybody who's accessing that data, all stakeholders, have access to that data. Number one, so that's very important. The availability and accessibility of that data to everyone, right? Even if somebody has to look at a Google Analytics dashboard, would have a lot of queries at that time. You know, you can't have somebody who's confused. So that they need support at that time. So some editors, they're really good in what they're doing, but they will need some hand-holding and understanding the technology behind how the data is showing up. So that's very important. So very important job for an analytics guy is to ensure that the availability and accessibility is pristine, right? The next part, I would put it as number 2, is to ensure that the data that's coming in is making sense. That it is correct. It's properly tagged. There's something which is not really out of ordinary. So you have to understand that. Like if you see there are a lot of pages on top which don't make sense, the answer needs to come up real fast. Otherwise, you know, this is going to lead everybody astray. So it's a very important task for them to ensure that the sanity of data that's coming in is taken care of. And then, I would say, obviously, analyze the data that's coming in. Analyze on the go. You have to figure out which sources are the users engaging more on, what kind of content they're engaging more on. You know, what is how they're using. Like Abhishek mentioned, are the users being recirculated? You know, is there any bottleneck? Are there any call to action which is not working out? So in real time, they have to bring in and push in these kind of traffic. They also need to inform people whether the traffic trend is receding, whether it's rising, whether it's plateauing, whether it's re-emerging. So all those pointers or all those guidance has to come from analytics, right? And of course, along with all of this, they have to manage requirements which keep coming in. Like I mentioned in my first point, there'll be a lot of people who would require assistance. You know, what data is coming in, this is not making sense. They need somebody to help them out real time. So more than anything, even the reassurance part is a big game there.
Right. Absolutely. And I think you have actually answered the question which I was about to ask you next as well. That what kind of reports or dashboards in the newsroom in a live event, like what kind of data is actually looked at? I think you beautifully answered that as well. Abhishek, is there any? Sorry, please.
You want me to elaborate on that? The kind of dashboards, right? One which we see as a background on Abhishek's screen. So that is a very big input. So the dashboards real time. I mean everything real time, because they don't need to look at historical. That should have been done before that event.
Right. Yeah.
Historical data, your learnings from it, your analysis, what happens, what is expected. Everything should have been done before the event. But at the time of the event, they need to know what's going on. So the real time dashboard Chartbeat provides. Google Analytics, right? What are the concurrent users? Your log files, your Akamai server, your page performance reports at that time. So, like I mentioned in my previous answer to you, so everything people are actually looking at: product, marketing, editorial, SEO, analytics, everybody. So all those dashboards need to be available at that time, right? So I mean, these are dashboards which are on the platform itself. It's not like something you're creating and you're doing something. Yeah, in some cases you can have everything feed it into, if you have a real-time stream that you can bring in all things in one place and have a great visualization, great.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Abhishek, anything to add to that? Do you have any pet report that you would want to share?
So I think, I mean, going back, so like Chanpit has actually pretty much covered everything. But if I probably had to dig deep a little bit more, I want to go back to the point where you mentioned how does the data get analyzed, or how does this happen? I think very beautifully Chanpit said it's actually everyone's job.
Yeah.
So it's becoming more and more important now that there's a cultural shift within newsrooms that digital transformation is adopted. Everyone needs to understand data, because you might think that call it live events, call it breaking news, right? News is very, very, even like a 10-second difference can really make a big difference in terms of how you get your users and how you lose them. So while traffic is great, I think the key here essentially is engagement. So that engagement will drive that loyalty. And that engagement drives that recirculation, which is getting users to actually click onto more pages within your site. And when you get more users to click within the site, you actually increase the propensity of them returning, and then you increase loyalty. But
absolutely.
If I look at how a newsroom is structured, just from an editorial standpoint, because I think Chanpit covered the overall high level, even from an editorial standpoint, there are homepage editors, there are social media editors, there are actually article page editors, there are different section editors. So just imagine all of them working together and ensuring that whatever is published, looking at drop-off points.
Right.
If there's a really good story, but why are users dropping off? You just don't get it.
Yeah.
Stuff like this will really make a big difference, within these live events or within breaking news. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is beautiful. Focus on the drop-offs. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
That's for sure.
Okay. Let's talk about planned events and breaking news from now, right? I know we have covered this in one of our earlier segments as well with the speakers. And yet I still believe that this is a very critical part that needs to be zoomed in from the analytics point of view. So, Chanpreet, my question to you is that the Olympics is a planned event. Demonetization was not. That was crazy, right? So, what changes in your approach towards the execution when it comes to covering these two events?
Yeah, great. The demarcation is very clear. Breaking news is something you don't plan for most of the times, right?
Yeah.
And planned events are obviously something you've discussed in your meetings, and you've prepared for it. You have estimates, you have expectations, you have roles for everybody well defined. You have availability. The biggest part is this event is going to happen at this time. We need to have staffing. We need to have availability, right? Breaking news hits you when you're, seemingly not prepared.
Right.
But I would put it this way, in the business that we are, news publishing, you always expect breaking news, right? That's a good thing that is happening.
Right.
And breaking news is icing on the cake on everything that you do, right? This is something which is everybody's dream. So you can't say that, you were not prepared, because you have been preparing from day one. You've always been prepared for breaking news. So when that happens, you might not have the goals, you might not have the volume, you might not have the staffing, you might not have everything. But pretty much when a breaking news happens, since everybody is accustomed, they've already planned for it, everything comes together, right? The information spreads and everybody knows their roles. Everybody beautifully fits into it. And, suddenly it is no more a breaking news kind of a scenario. I think initially there might be certain changes. The only biggest change I would see is that you might not be prepared. You might not have done your keyword research. You might not have done your content planning.
Right.
Might not have the volumes that you need to send out. So all those things then start coming in real time. And that's where, data is very important. Data in real time has to come in and has to iteratively give you inputs. This is where things are moving. This is where, users' interest is moving, or user interest is going up or down, right? something similar might happen on a planned event, right? In a planned event, something like a Man Ki Baat, right? It was started, initially it was a big draw.
Right.
Then it started happening too often.
Right.
Right. So the trajectory of the volumes will not be same as it was in the first couple of events. It would go down, obviously, unless there is some big announcement which is coming up. And if you remember, I mean, in these kind of events, everybody expected an announcement.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That is what you were preparing for.
Right.
It might have worked in a couple of Man Ki Baat, but later on, when no announcement came in, it became very a straightforward discussion. Then the user interest actually died down.
Yeah.
And when I say user interest, it's both way, right? That input has to come from users with data, right?
Right.
The more they engage with you, the more interest it is. And that's what happens in a breaking news. Breaking news, you're not sure that this is going to work or not.
Right.
But as the development happens, people start getting discoverability. When things, to put it in a very SEO term, is when it starts trending.
Yeah.
Right. So in that term, the one demarcation is, your planned event and a breaking news. In a breaking news also, breaking versus trending is a very big difference.
Right.
It might break at a time, it might not get you traffic. So it's a horseshoe kind of a trend which starts up. So something here, people are producing a lot of content, but this will get discovered when it is trending high.
Right.
It's going up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from here till here, you get a lot of time to prepare. I mean, when I say a lot of time, minutes, hours are a lot of time in the kind of business we are in.
Right. Absolutely.
You have to prepare, and that's where you have to get into the game.
Right.
If you're well equipped, if your machine is well oiled, then it should be no different from a plan event. That's
okay.
That's what I want to put in.
So, but during this time, right? How would you ensure that you actually stay ahead of the competition? Because everyone is in the same place, right? Everyone is trying to figure out the keywords. Everyone is trying to do what, let's say, you guys are doing. So, what is that thing that you would do? Yeah.
Exactly. So the preparation. When I said the preparation, breaking news for analytics happens months before that breaking news came in. Right? So you should have your structure in place. You should have your processes in place. You should know how your data comes in, how the things are tagged properly, how is the data being distributed, your accessibility, the things that I mentioned in my first answer to you, right? So all those things we have prepared for. And when an event really happens, data is the difference maker out there. Because like you rightly said, everybody's doing that. Everybody's chasing the same kind of keywords. Everybody's chasing the same kind of stuff. There's a lot of wire copies coming in. So everybody knows exactly, maybe a little difference in the way they curate their content, but more or less it's the same kind of steps everybody has to follow. So the difference maker out here is data and analysis that you've done, and the preparation with the data preparation that you've done for that time. So if that time you don't have anything with you, you don't have any robust real-time reporting, then you're in trouble. and I'm sure Abhishek is very happy with this statement.
I'm actually going to quote you on this, Janpreet.
So Abhishek, on that note, right, what would you say are the mistakes that one should be aware of while covering any breaking news?
So this is a very tricky question you're asking. I mean, someone who's actually selling or managing analytics solutions.
See, I'm the devil's advocate. Go ahead.
So, but I think, since I'm actually dealing with like journalists, editors and publishers like all the time. So there are many things, right? I think the first thing is, like, I wouldn't say mistakes, but I think I'll probably get to the core of the thing. When you started your question, you asked me, how do you generate traffic?
Right.
Now, really, like, we need to ask the publisher, or say as a publisher, what do you want to achieve from this event? Like, what is your objective? I think you need to be very clear about what you want to achieve from the live event. Right. Or say if there is a breaking news, then obviously it's chaos, right? But you want to leverage that chaos ASAP.
Right.
Let's talk about a live event. If your objective is to increase traffic, there are many ways to do that. And but at the end of the day, if you leverage traffic, or if you try to find ways to increase traffic, you might succeed and you will get a lot of traffic, but then you might not retain 80 to 90% of those users. In fact, more, I think.
Right. Right.
But if your objective is, I want to build a loyal audience, I want to build engagement, and this is the perfect time to do it, then you take the following steps that we've already discussed, which is, I mean, A is, so I'll give you examples. Let's talk about drop-off points, right?
Right.
So there's an article that is generating crazy amount of buzz,
Sure.
but there are only 3 to 4% of users who are actually clicking onto another article or actually clicking on somewhere else within the site. The first thing that you do is you find out, where are these users dropping off? Why are they dropping off? There could be many reasons they're dropping off. They could, I mean, it could be a technical issue. They're not resonating with something within the article. There's probably an image that they don't like. Maybe there's an ad. It could be anything, right?
Right.
In those areas, something as simple as adding a link. Wherever there's a high drop-off point, you add a link, you can get the user to actually recirculate, and that increases your recirculation. It actually increases your engagement and your recirculation to a large extent. I think the second, now the second element here is, but I think Chanpreet also mentioned really well, is testing. And I know Chanpreet will probably point this out again, but I love talking about this. The way your homepage is optimized, the way your users actually visit your site, and be a live event, you will see a lot of traffic on your homepage. If your homepage is not optimized in the right way, and if you're not testing constantly, now that testing could be headlines, that testing could be images, that testing could be moving headlines, that testing also could be seeing exactly how users are on that particular homepage. And now this testing is applicable for any scenario, even within different traffic sources. If you just leave it the way it is, then you probably most likely will just see a big, you'll see a big, say like a spike, and then after that, suddenly it's just going to go down. But if you want to maintain that spike and kind of create some sort of if you want to create some sort of stability, testing is the only way that it's possible. So I would say, in terms of mistakes, I think a lot of times what happens is people get very excited, when there's a story or when there is an event that's generating a lot of buzz, and you start focusing on, okay, let's just keep writing more stuff about this, and let's not optimize it, or let's not focus on what's really working, or how can we actually harness this, how can we engage the user. Then what happens is that you have that big increment, and then you lose it as fast. This would be the biggest, I think I would say this, and another very bold statement that I probably should not make, so I apologize.
Go ahead.
Or publishing content based on instinct rather than not data, and then rather than not looking at real-time data.
Wow.
I think that could result in, if you write stories based on gut and not look at data, then there is a very high chance that maybe the story doesn't work, or it doesn't resonate with the audience, and you lose out. You're actually losing out a lot of opportunity. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, that's what I would say would be mistakes. But I'm sure Chanpreet has much more that he could share, with the subject.
This has been really insightful. Yeah, this has been great. Yeah.
Abhishek mentioned it, quite rightly. So the shelf life of an article generally, if you speak, is around 3 hours, right? So if you're not analyzing it, you're losing out opportunity of optimizing it. So it's all about optimizing it in real time. It's like driving in dark with your headlights off.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. Right. Got it. Wow, this has been truly insightful, guys. This is awesome. Right. I think we are a bit pressed for time, so I'm gonna try to fit in 2 more questions, right, before we end this. So this is the last bit here. Chanpreet, I have a 2-part question for you, right? Today, if you have to hire a new person, right, to be a part of your team, what would be the top 5 things you would ask him or her to watch like a hawk while covering any live event? And does those top 5 things change when you compare a small team who has to wear multiple hats, juggle various functions, versus a large newsroom like Network 18, which is full of specialists?
Great. I'll answer the second part first. It doesn't really matter if you got a small team or a big team. The reason you have a team, small or big, is because you have certain certain requirements, right? So those requirements could be you're aligning them with different business verticals that you have, and for them to do. So the way I look at it, and when I hire analysts, I ensure that they are doing the entire 360 degrees. It's not like you do this and you do that.
Right.
I see that happening and I know where you're coming from. You know, a very large organization which is who's got like thousands of analysts sitting out there, and I've interviewed a lot of people. So what I understand is that they are only privy to what they're doing. You know, stuff comes, they're supposed to perform certain tasks, pull some data, add some data, and then pass it on. That's not how an analyst should be. An analyst should be doing the entire 360 degrees of it. You know, right from the data capture to data storage to data processing to data reporting to analysis to insights, and also contributing to what that data is bringing in for the business of the product. So the entire 360 degrees of it, and then go back to the data capturing part. So this entire cyclic thing, it doesn't make any difference whether it's a big newsroom, you got too many people, you got too few people.
Okay. All right.
Coming to, so you said how many points I have to tell you?
That's I said 5. I think you can just give us 1. That's all right. So, I know I put you on the spot here. Yeah.
So see, like I mentioned in my previous answers to you, all the things that analysts have to do, you know, you have to ensure that the data sanity is there. So the first part, first and foremost, the person has to keep an eye, ensure that whatever data is coming in is making sense.
Right.
So that whether it's properly tagged, codes are firing, all those things. So that sanity check is first thing that he has to keep an eye on.
Right.
That goes without saying.
Right.
And of course, in real time, he has to keep an eye on the numbers, concurrencies, you know, what is happening, when it is going up. And I'll notate it because very few tools would, you know, notate that, okay, this was the peak concurrencies. So he should be able to give an answer saying whether this is still rising or it is plateaued or whether it's going down. That's a key input that needs to come from analytics, right?
Got it.
Then, you know, you have to communicate. So the third part is that you have to go ahead and keep your communication channels open with everyone. So you need to know at all times what kind of production is happening at content, what kind of development that might come in, what kind of marketing channels are open at that time. So without those inputs, analysis is not possible. You need to have all those inputs coming in from all stakeholders. So that's the third part that he has to do. Then you have to ensure that the data that or the data, like we talked about dashboards, what kind of dashboards, data accessibility is there for everyone. So that's another thing you have to ensure proactively saying that this is something which is there.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, how many points I covered? I've lost track.
I think you have covered it all, right? I really think you have.
Whatever you do, you know, you have to keep a notation of what's happening in real time, because then whatever you're doing in that time during that event, that breaking news, you have to take it as input for your future events.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? All these pointers put together and more, of course, but then these are certain things which are very important.
Got it. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, both of you, for giving us, like, you know, a good feel of the high volatile energy, right, that newsrooms are made of. This has been absolutely remarkable. You have lovelyly shared your operating playbooks and everything. Thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. I hope everyone got to, you know, soak in all the good stuff which you guys have said. I think I'll pass on the torch to Shell for the next segment, right? All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Guys, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.